Welcome to the Customer Support Client Success Executive Brain Trust. Today, we had a great discussion about public speaking. And of course, this is our post event panel discussion where we get to talk about some of our key takeaways from today. Joe is the person that gave our lightning talk. He has some great experience and some great insights to share. If you haven't had a chance yet to watch his lightning presentation, please go to our LinkedIn page to see that, our customer support LinkedIn page to see that. But Joe, I'm going to pass it over to you to kind of summarize what you chatted about. Then I'm going to open it up to our awesome panel here to share what some of their key takeaways were from today. So over to you, Joe.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so in my presentation today, I talked about why public speaking is an essential skill set for leaders, especially in customer support and success. I discussed how, a lot of people have angst and worried about public speaking, but we do it every day in our daily roles. A little personal anecdote about my history, my journey of public speaking, from being really scared to having some success. I gave some takeaways, lessons learned over speaking in front of conferences and remote learning, as well as gave some options to practice, because practice makes perfect. So I spoke about improv as well as an organization called Toastmasters. That's what we spoke about today in terms of public speaking and why it is essential skill set for leaders in customer success and support.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. And we had the chat was on fire, and a lot of folks shared some really great tips, tricks, and things like that around getting comfortable with public speaking. Now I'm going to open it up to our panel here. What were some of your key takeaways? What were some of your thoughts as we covered this topic? Tony, I'm going to have you start, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. Really in the breakout rooms, we didn't get a chance to go over too many little details because we were so busy telling stories, about our favorite customer interactions. I know Patrick, who's in this room right now, was in that break room, and that was pretty cool. But as far as, what Joe discussed, I think a couple things really hit the head on the nail there. It was the pausing aspect that he had kind of discussed. And, I had a teacher back in undergrad, Dr. Johnson, kind of went over a couple different things. He used to say, like, respect the pause. I think that's a great kind of slogan, because honestly, I think you buy yourself a lot of room to kind of just let the speech kind of sink in a little bit. But also the embrace the plant. Joe kind of touched on planting certain people in the audience to kind of touch on certain questions, kind of set up those softball questions for you and really get you into a rhythm. I think that's the biggest thing, is once you get into a rhythm, speaking to an audience is super helpful. And so be able to have those sorts of people in the audience helping you out is huge. And I think another thing too, most people maybe either don't realize or they forget, is just a lot of people just zone out when they're listening to you. And I think that was like one of the biggest things that helped me start to become a better speaker. Is, I feel like half the time people aren't even listening, or half the audience might be, having their own thoughts, they're daydreaming, or they're thinking about what they're going to say. And the more you get comfortable with that aspect, I think the more comfortable you get just speaking to those people. And your job isn't necessarily to please everybody you're speaking to, but the ones that are really engaged and focused and interested in what you're saying and what you're preaching, you can really make an impact in those people's lives. But I think kind of following those few things has helped me a tremendous amount. I was terrified of it, up until about undergrad. I had that class, and then that really kind of shifted the narrative about how I felt about those things. Um, so those are just a few things that I really try to stick to, and I think they're super helpful for me. And I would, encourage everybody to try those things out.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. Let's go, Chris, and then Peter.
Thank you. I really loved Joe's approach and how thoughtful and structured he was about walking through the subject matter. It's clear that it's something he cares deeply about, and I really appreciated him bringing his expertise. And I really enjoyed bringing that structure to the breakout rooms. That was a lot of fun. I got to share some great stories. From my side, a couple of suggestions. One thing that I've got exposed to is the work of someone named Vanessa Van Edwards. Her most recent book is Cues and it talks about a lot of different little tips, especially in a Zoom setting, the distance from the screen and speaking on a down breath, not and then speaking from the top of your voice and how that can change the way that you speak. The other tip that I always talk about, and I actually have used this in training with service folks also, is, and this especially goes for, I'm a New Yorker. New Yorkers can be a fast talking bunch. Once we get going, it starts to get a little out of hand. So I always say that if in your head it sounds as if you're speaking a little bit slowly, you're probably going at the right pace to make sure that everybody else you're speaking to can understand everything you're saying.
Lovely, lovely additions there. Thank you so much, Chris. All right, we'll go Peter and then Michael.
Great, thanks, Paul. Yeah, I echo what Michael said. I really thought, or what Chris said about Joe's presentation. I really loved the fact that he brought up improv techniques, because it's something, over the years you might hear about a lot. It's something I've definitely embraced in my career. And when I present to larger groups, I often have that in my head as is just imagining that everybody in the audience has been through an improv class. And so they're thinking of it as, yes, and so anything I'm going to say, they're going to be supportive of. And if you think of them as a supportive audience, I just put you in a different frame of mind, and it helps you build some sort of personal confidence. Worst thing that can happen is somebody's going to ask a question if there's a Q&A session that you might not know the answer to. So I think practicing being prepared for that, I think, is good, is just knowing how to respond to people when they challenge you on something or bring something up that maybe you did not know. I think a lot of people's anxiety about public speaking comes back to, there's a difference between presenting to a lot of complete strangers versus presenting to people that might be similar subject matter experts in the area that you're talking about. But being okay in that uncomfortable unknown, I think, is really key. And I think just being prepared for those types of challenges is really important.
Okay. I'll go next. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciated the presentation. During your presentation, I thought back maybe to my own journey on public speaking and where I was maybe at the beginning of my career. And I thought about one of my first jobs where selling mutual funds for a very big financial services company. We were forced to do this quarterly sales pitch contest where you would stand up in a room full of 100 of your closest peers and give a 5-minute sales pitch to ultimately sell mutual funds. And I can remember being incredibly nervous and apprehensive about talking in front of people who I knew and spent a lot of time with in and out of the office. And I feel like if you can master or get more comfortable with speaking with your peers, your coworkers, whether it's taking a few minutes to go into a conference room, an empty conference room, and practice your pitch, practice a topic, you'll be a lot better suited so that whether you're giving a presentation to your company, whether it's your organization, whether it's one of your silos or departments, you'll be prepared, but also you'll be a lot more confident when you're speaking to people that you may not have a personal connection with or a professional connection. And I feel like that gives you kind of the best of both worlds. Your peers, your friends, your coworkers, they can be your harshest critic, and they can offer some great advice in the meantime that maybe a stranger on the street may not. So just a tip that I think helped me along my journey and may help down the line.
Wonderful tips and tricks. Appreciate this panel for sharing some of those best practices that you've learned. And of course, Joe, for bringing this up. No question, as you get better about your public speaking, it will impact every aspect of your career. And I'm sure that everyone here on the phone call can attest to that. So thank you all so much for sharing your insights. Thanks for coming to thanks for coming to the Customer Support Executive Brain Trust. And we'll see you all at next month's event.